Wow! It's a ship that flies and travels through time!
A huge evil battleship! A medieval castle!
And this music! This is like the best video game soundtrack ever!
This game is a non-stop thrill! A frog? Hilarious! And he talks like an old school knight!
What kind of grand attacks will this wonderful character wow me with? Well, maybe there's a huge payoff, right? Maybe it like grows into a huge bubble and then cascades into a gigantic waterfall. Maybe it swallows the enemy and then bounces them all around the battlefield. That would be cool. There must be some kind of awesome ending to this move. Oh, God. Good to see you, gamers, and welcome again to the weekend. This is Shep from Gaming Introspection. If you find any of the Chrono Trigger analysis really entertaining or funny, please give me a like and subscribe. I would love to have you along for future episodes. Chrono Trigger has become such a timeless game. It's almost become lost in time because it's old, like me. And it's such a classic game that maybe it does need a reintroduction.
This was a dream team mashup between Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Yuji Ori, the creator of Dragon Quest, and Akira Toriyama, whose character art is known worldwide among such works as Dragonball Z. It had an amazing battle system that combined the powers of all of your party members, a soundtrack that is still regarded a quarter century later as one of the best ever, and amazing character design that spanned millions of years of history. All of these elements continuously place Chrono Trigger within the best role-playing game or even best game of all time lists, even in the recent ones.
Let's reflect on how amazing the best moments of Chrono Trigger were, and also undergo the most arduous, toughest challenge of all, trying to find some mistakes with this revered legend. This is the hits and misses of Chrono Trigger.
This August 1995 release looked and sounded better than anything on any system at the time. Just look at these detailed, hand-drawn backdrops. Even today, they look spectacular, and you can see so many tiny details that draw you into each of the worlds and time periods. The mountainous horizon in the background of Guardia's castle just screams out to be gazed at. When I first got this game, I ran back and forth across the bridges here just to marvel at how realistic this looked at the time. The populated courtroom crowd and stained glass window completely sets the authoritative and stressful tone for the trial scene. And the thrilling Mode 7 bike race gives you complete camera control, including zoom control and rotation, with the ever-present storm clouds, jagged mountains, and desolate landscape contrasting with the high-intensity racing excitement. Mountainous areas like Denadoro immerse you in tranquil nature and river sounds, expanding to flourishes of vibrant waterfalls gently cascading downwards. And once you make it up higher, there's beautiful vistas of even more distant hilltops that make you stop and stare. Even the in-game characters aren't immune to the beauty of this game, like this imp that keeps declaring how relaxing the mountains are until you bother him so much that he gives you a magic boost just to get you the hell away from him. The quality also applies to the battle animations. Many previous RPGs, even the highly regarded ones like Final Fantasy VI, used repetitive static backdrops and enemy sprites that didn't really animate. Are things getting hurt? Am I getting damaged? Are there attacks being used? I guess the answer is yes, because there's numbers popping up and going down, but man, it doesn't really give me the impression that anything noteworthy is happening. The most ambitious thing enemies do here is flip their horizontal image. Even your own characters have very limited animations, not really moving much toward the enemy, just kind of slashing at nothing. Oh, not to mention, you never saw the enemies on the field. It was just magic transportation. Okay, battle done. I'm gonna keep going here and battle teleport. Oh, whew. Done with that. Again and again with the same few exact backgrounds ad nauseum. Here, every single battle takes place in a unique setting, right on the same field map that you're exploring. The threats are much more organic and alive. Enemies will pop out of the forest, chime bells to wake up trolls to gang up on you, sound mechanical alarms and go on high alert in robotic factories, even fall out of the damn sky! It really kept the player immersed in the environment and gave each encounter more weight. You can even dodge threats using the environment if you're observant enough to keep to the right paths. Make an escape on a rope ladder to avoid the evil roly-poly. Or wait until these alien eyes go shut so you can make your stealthy way across without fighting. Unlike the older Final Fantasy games, when you attack an enemy, your character actually moves to that enemy. And there's even different animations for firearm characters, depending on whether they're right next to the enemy or far away. This also affects battle strategy in a way we'll talk about in a bit. But the best examples of the technology and magic in Chrono Trigger is best displayed in the double and triple text you pull off with combinations of characters. You feel like the battle is really raging because the visual spectacle is so colorful and energized. Witness the shimmering triangle of Delta Force, the simple but satisfying X shape on X Strike, or the wicked storm of Fire Zone, which is definitely one of my favorite triple techs. And in the background of all of this were some of the most amazing songs to blast out of CRT televisions. Even the amount of songs is staggering for a game in the mid-90s. There were over 60 separate tracks. I mean, we're in 2022, and there's still many games who don't even have close to that amount in them. In fact, the main sound designer, Yasunori Mitsuda, had worked himself to the point of collapse before the game was finished, eventually handing some of the finishing tracks off to legendary Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu. Even simple field maps benefited from the care and time put into their themes. This fast-paced grunge for walking through a dystopian city street nails the shift in tone and theme when you first enter the hellish landscape of 2300 AD. You'll get enamored with high-energy battle tracks, fitting character themes that nail the personality of each one, sensitive emotional tracks, and absolutely stunning endgame orchestrations that really tell a player, wake up. This is life or death. The future of the world is right here.
Let's do a full-scale example of the visual and audio wizardry implanted within this game. Specifically for those of you who have never played Chrono Trigger, I present to you the following story sequence. You have no context, no prior experience with the game, but tell me, yes, seriously, tell me in the comments if this scene, matched with the music, makes an impact on you. Right? A soundtrack really does make a difference, and paired with the visuals, it really enhances the magnitude of this climactic moment. And if you're old, like me, and you have memories of this, let me know if viewing it again stirred up some emotions inside of you.
I could give a hit based on the main ending of Chrono Trigger alone. It starts with fighting Lavos. There's the ominous heartbeat as you warp through the time gate to face the alien parasite. The 3-part final boss battle with incredible special effects and intimidating attacks. All backed by one of the most absolutely banging penultimate boss music, which is still among the greatest in history. When you finally win, you're led to the sheer enjoyment of letting the player roam around and talk to people during the conclusion. This is something I had never experienced before. An ending that you can participate in? Damn! Next, you have an emotionally charged rendition of Marl's theme music that brings things to a close. You're likely fighting back tears as you have to let the party members each go back to their own time. And it's complete with a classic princess kissing the frog moment that I'm sure many players anticipated from early on. It's cheesy, but it's cute, so it works. Then, this finally gives way to an astounding display of Mode 7 graphics as the epic time machine traverses the world, free and majestic with the terrain gracefully panning down below. The 3 original characters briefly visit each era, giving us heartwarming glimpses of the party members each finding their own place and path in a future that they have made their own. It's said that the main composer, Mitsuda, cried upon witnessing the ending that he helped make a reality. I know, as a kid, I was absolutely awestruck by this. I didn't think graphics or music could ever get better. And even though they did, I'm not sure if any game since has ever impressed me in that moment better than Chrono Trigger did, especially as night falls over Guardia, the time machine fades into the horizon, and the world you just saved comes into sharp focus.
That would have been more than memorable enough. But there was more. Chrono Trigger instilled a system after beating it called New Game Plus. And while it was one of the very first games to implement such a system, the developers completely nailed it in terms of making revisiting the game a much more worthwhile experience that emphasized more instant gratification.
Players would restart the game, but keep all character levels and weaponry, which not only made subsequent playthroughs much faster, but allowed them to take on the final boss whenever they wanted, thanks to a hidden time gate that appears in the same fairground teleporter area in which the whole conflict began. By challenging Lavos at different periods in the game, you could view 13 different endings, each with their own character focus and theme. Some are just must-sees, like Frog fighting Magus in the castle solo. He sets off on his own, effortlessly dispatching Ozzy and Magus's minions before engaging in a battle that everyone, to this day, wishes they could actually see play out, or better yet, participate in, instead of having to hear it through the credits. It ends with an ambiguous figure standing atop the keep. Gamers, who won this fight? They both wear capes. The size difference would make it seem like it's Frog, and that is my own personal opinion. But it's quite far away to definitively say that. And Magus does have the last sound effect you hear in this credit battle. It's yet another discussion topic I'd love you gamers to chime in on. Other favorites of mine include the slideshow ending, where the girls rate the men of the game, which is also the only instance in the entire game where Chrono talks. This is so random and out of the blue, but it is worth it just for the shock value. Seriously, he has 2 lines of dialogue in this entire game. Priceless. Another memorable one that's so ridiculous it's funny is the end of time ending where the creators put themselves in the game. You get a lot of inside info on all the main programmers. I mean, I literally think they stuck almost everyone in here. You can even fight and gain experience. It ends with seeing all the Dream Team people I mentioned in the intro appearing as caricatures of themselves. Finally, they make a joke about how fast you beat the game and show an expedited credit sequence to celebrate it. The game even rewards you when you die! Yeah, if you lose to Lavos, you're given a more detailed version of what happens when you first found the footage of Lavos' eruption in 1999, with the most grim, no-nonsense tagline that kids probably had nightmares over. But the future refused to change. Regardless of which one you find, all of them were different and gave an already replayable game even more fuel for players to burn through it in multiple playthroughs. And when you talk about games that pioneered established trends, even future ones from different genres and eras, like Resident Evil 4 with its same loadout retention, owe something to this humble 16-bit legend. Magus is absolutely awesome. He initially seems very one-note, portrayed as extremely sinister, labeled as a secondary major antagonist before you even meet him. But instead, he becomes an anti-hero who gets layers of depths and dimension added to him in later acts of the game, with a very rich and complex backstory involving his childhood and sister Shala, which then weaves into the origins of Lavos and his subsequent quest for revenge. He meets his past self, has to deal with your interference in his plan to destroy Lavos. He's easily the most complex character in Chrono Trigger. He even rules as a boss battle, presenting one of the toughest challenges in the game up to that point. And oh yeah, he ends up becoming a playable character for the final act of the game, as long as you spare him by not fighting him.
And if you didn't spare him, what the hell is wrong with you? He's a lonely child, separated from the only family he ever had, who is just searching for his sister. He wants Lavos gone as much as anybody!
He put the whole world at risk, yeah, by summoning Lavos to his castle, but he wasn't pulling Lavos into the world to doom civilization. He was trying to get revenge on it, for destroying the world and the only family he'd ever known! Yeah, it was stupid that his mother was the one who made Lavos freak out in her lust for power, but that's not his fault! He even anticipates everything when he was just a boy, but he was at the mercy of the greed and ineptitude of people more powerful than him.
If you kill him in battle, you're not only saying a callous good riddance to the coolest character in this game, you're denying a good man and a chance at redemption! And if you were a little wuss and ganged up on him 3-on-1, you're even worse! 3-on-1? What is the matter with you?
Yeah, those 3,000 experience points were so important, weren't they?
Kill and pillage! It doesn't matter, as long as you are the beneficiary of those soulless data increases. Thank goodness Luca's magic stat went up by 1. Yeah, thank goodness for that. Oh my god, what the hell were you thinking? You didn't even let Glenn get his revenge. The frog is just picking his mucus-filled nose on the other side of the cape while Magus dies. But I digress.
He has every elemental spell and is the only character who innately has the shadow magic element. He also has my favorite personal tech in Black Hole, a black void that sucks opponents into it, into the nether regions of space. What could be more badass than this? His stats are the highest of any character in the game, he wields the coolest weapon, and has the most secretive ultimate weapon in the entire game, in the Doom Scythe. If you know where to find this, you are a true Chrono fan. You'd initially think his disadvantage lies in the fact that he doesn't have any natural combo attacks with other characters, which is a huge hit on its own. Chrono Trigger has so many eye-catching combo attacks that are learned when two characters combine one of their special moves. Some of my favorites include Antipode 3 with Marl and Luca, and X-Strike is probably the most famous, with Chrono and Frog. Magus would appear to have none, but there are secret stones in the game that can be equipped, and let him use the most amazing triple techs in the game, like Dark Eternal and Omega Flare, which is my all-time favorite. And then there's his dialogue, especially if you take Chrono along, who's mute. He is forced to be the one to speak up when the plot calls for it. He is blunt, devious, and more intense than almost any character at the time. Watch him lay waste to Maro when she's overcome with how to solve the king's trial case in the castle. He casually calls the Princess of Guardia an idiot, and upon finding a heartfelt note from Queen Leene to Maro, he declares, "There's a letter here. Shall we burn it?" Oh man, that's just so rude, it's funny. If it's not Shala, he could care less about the bonds people have with others. Here's my all-time favorite exchange. "Idiots, nothing lives forever." How badass is that? Nintendo games aren't supposed to have dialogue like this. If this was another game, same setting, same stakes and everything, it'd be like this. "I will live forever!" And then Magus would go, "Oh yeah? Well, I'm gonna stop you!" Nintendo games of this era didn't like delving into such sinister anti-hero themes. Magus is just the ultimate dude in this game. He doesn't break from his mold either. He's dead set on destroying Lavos throughout. And even in the ending, when Maro reaches out and asks him about his future, he simply leaves, hell-bent on finding Shala on his own without any regard. The contract he had between you and the party is over once Lavos is destroyed. Magus does what he wants to. And his theme music. I mean, how can you not love this? Chills. It's ominous, but it's got a portion with furious battle energy. And tell me another character who literally has wind and evil laughter orchestrated within their theme composition. Chrono veterans will know what I mean, and if you don't, just search it up. It holds up today, believe me.
Visuals, soundtrack, characters, combat, we all know how wonderful CT is by this time. Its legendary status knows no bounds. But it's my job to point out the copious flaws that are lurking within inside every single game, regardless of how much it is beloved. So get ready for the ultimate teardown of Chrono Trigger's nefarious, copious, immeasurable misses. Prepare to feel absolutely dismayed! No. Huh. I gotta be honest, I really struggled to find any misses with this game. It's got so many overwhelming strengths, and childhood nostalgia and glorious past memories almost completely blinded me. But it is my job to find that other side, even if it's almost completely hidden. And I was able to find a few. Okay, for real this time.
This is the only aspect I can find in Chrono Trigger that has aged poorly. Most enemies die in 1 or 2 hits, and leveling up is very easy. I know I'm using maxed equipment here, but trust me, it's the same as you go through the game regularly. There are a few difficult boss fights if you don't find the correct strategy or hint. The dragon tank near the beginning comes to mind, the golem twins in the ocean palace can rip you apart if you try to win with physical attacks. Zeal can destroy you easily with a bunch of magic stealing and some attacks that bring you down to 1 HP, which is pretty threatening. And the very final boss fight definitely has some brutal, bludgeoning attacks that can wipe you out. But that's the final boss, and other than that, there's not too much challenge. I mean, other bosses shoot bubbles at you. It's pathetic. Even the optional side quest bosses are mostly rehashes of earlier encounters in the game, so you know what's coming, and they don't up the ante much. They have the exact same attack patterns and are simply palette swaps. This lack of challenge is a shame because there are so many attacks. Literally over 100 techs you can use, solo or combined with others. But using them seems like overkill in 90% of the situations. I mean, you're gonna summon this 100-foot wide frog that then attacks with the ultimate fire magic spell to attack some snake dudes? Alright, you do you, buddy. Got some minor enemies? Let's flash freeze them and then slowly melt them down. Oh, you're hurt? You're actually hurt? Oh, here's an Omni Heal spell. Oh, and another. And another! One more! Need even more bubble wrap? Behold, Lifeline, a tech that barely costs any magic that lets every character come back to life in battle. It would have benefited the entire battle engine and rewarded the creativity of the designers much more if there were more challenging battles that actually made it necessary to use these different attacks. Like the Lifeline one, that is actually a really cool idea. But there's not ever any situation where you need it. And even if there was, you can just cast it over and over so you'll never die. There's also some cool in-theory features too that are very underutilized. I mean, take Chrono Slash Attack. If you use it just whenever, you'll probably just get one enemy. But if you watch the enemy movement and notice they sometimes line up behind one another, your slash can rip through 2 or more enemies at once. Same thing with attacks like Falcon Hit and Line Bomb. Group attacks like Max Cyclone and Fire Zone require enemies to be near Robo, who swings Chrono around. It's an incredibly diverse set of movement rules. Check out this example with all these snake monsters. I select Max Cyclone, which has an area of an effect radius around Robo, so I can't do much at the start of the battle. But if I show enough patience, the snakes eventually close in on the party, perfectly in range of this beefy attack. Enemy behaviors are even more varied in how they attack. Sometimes they'll use your positioning against you, like Slash in Magus' castle. They might leech off of their own kind to survive, or beat the crap out of each other to activate a powerful attack. But all these cool variables and movements never amounts to much, because you can usually just as easily hit attack, 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 and get the same result. There's so much wasted potential in what is otherwise an intricate and active battle system. Even if you do happen to get into trouble, without even trying, you'll amass a plethora of items that can restore any amounts of HP or MP you could want, including some items that do both, and shelters that fully heal you at save points. Topping it all off, at any particular stage of the story, there are areas where you can easily grind for about half an hour and get drastically overpowered. I'm talking about the cathedral early in the game, the new monster that will make your characters learn all their powerful tech abilities within a dozen or so fights, and the golden volcano things that give tons of experience points for battles that are honestly just spam the attack button with no chance of dying. They can't even hurt you. It was already a fairly easy game, and these things are almost like beginner player crutches that really don't need to be there in the first place. Want a more challenging Chrono Trigger experience? I suggest not upgrading the equipment. Keep the originals on your characters. It'll force you to use your techs more, and thus will drain your magic faster, especially since you'll have to heal yourself more often. But even then, you'll find ways to make it easy for you. Even the game proves my point. Check out this quote from the creator's ending. "If you thought this was tough, try out Final Fantasy II." I rest my case. I'd say that this is one area that other RPGs, yes, like Final Fantasy, have an advantage. It's a game that begs a re-release with a more challenging difficulty setting, or professional mode. Oh. Okay, now here's where I can do some legit criticizing. Marle is already not the most interesting character in the game. She has some royal daddy issues, which cause her to be woefully unimpactful during moments that she could really have helped. Like this scene in the trial, where she makes this dramatic entrance saying, "Just a darn minute," before Dad comes in and is all like, "We're leaving," and Chrono is just like, "God damn, why didn't you do more to help me?" These issues with the king also get explored and ultimately resolved during an expansive side quest with Melchior and the Prism Shell. But other than that, she just kind of tags along cheerfully and acts as a default love interest for the protagonist Chrono. Including this admittedly funny dream Chrono has, where he's just a lazy bum who basks in leeching off Marle's dad for all eternity. She can be cringeworthy, like this moment here where her absolute idiocy happens to be the button press of a lifetime that shows the main characters the final boss in the game and plots their entire motivation for the rest of the story. What was this random button that she pushed? I want an examination of this control panel. Was it like a bright red button with a restricted note on it? Or was it just a generic switch or dial like Homer Simpson presses in the nuclear power plant episode?
The absurdness of this is ridiculous! What if that never happened? All that would happen next is the three of them going through the time gate, getting back home, and waiting out the rest of their lives, just happy to be out of this disgusting 2300 AD hellhole.
They didn't even know that they were in the future until Marle's curiosity deus ex machina the plot along. This is like the rat that brings Ant-Man back in Endgame. It's just so convenient and unrealistic.
Despite Marle's character flaws, that's not my big beef. I can think of other characters who are either more annoying or less relevant. But then we take her into battle.
Let's look at her move list. Every character has only 8 individual abilities that they each learn. So with Marle, she's supposed to be a healer type, like a white mage if you prefer Final Fantasy language, and that's fine. But let's run down her skill set and see what she brings to the fight. Her first skill is Aura. Okay, that's a useful spell that heals one ally, and it is helpful, especially early in the game when you pair with Chrono and do the Aura Whirl double tech. That's a good start. But then there's Cure. It's exactly the same thing, it just heals more damage. Again, just to one ally. That's already annoying. But hey, it can come in handy if you're in a tough boss fight and you need a full heal. But then there's Cure 2. First of all, the name is just damn stupid. Like if you had a kid and named it John, and you had another boy a year later, would you call him John 2? But this is the exact same thing as Cure, so I take that back. It's identical. Cure 2, yeah, it heals everything, but Cure already heals most, if not all, of the character's damage anyway. So Cure 2 is absolutely useless, because it costs more than double the magic points to do something that's basically the same as the inferior spell. That's bad enough, but we haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. Provoke.
Just look. Just look at this. Observe what it does. What the hell was that? What is she even doing? Is she, like, smacking her royal ass? Is that sexy? You know what? Maybe it's supposed to be. In the updated translation of the DS version, Provoke is actually known as Allure, so obviously it's a move that's trying to get the attention of enemies. But, well, like, what do you think? Does that get you going? Because for me, all it does is infuriate me with its uselessness!
And look, as soon as I use it, I get counterattacked with a tornado because all it did was piss these things off. This attack is supposed to confuse enemies, which it almost never does. The only enemies that seem to get affected by this are the lowest of low-tier roly-polies and birds, which doesn't even make any sense anyway. How does that action attract animals? Shouldn't it work best on humanoid characters, like the ones I was trying to do it on? Or is she just not as attractive as she thinks she is? On top of this, there's apparently an added effect that isn't as obvious. Apparently, using this provoke or allure or whatever the hell it is, draws enemies' attacks towards Marl. I have no idea if this actually occurs, but if that's true, given that her HP and defense is the worst in the game, and that she's sometimes the only healer in the party, that's probably the poorest character to even be doing this. Why would you want to attract the attention of sledgehammers and swords when you're the most inept character at defending yourself, and the main healer for others? It's not like there's no place for status spells in this game. Luca's got her Hypno Wave, which puts enemies to sleep and is actually useful. Look, it put that group I was wiping my ass at and put them to sleep instead. Thank God. This green sedating wave even works on some high caliber bosses, like the Golem twins. Look, I was dead here, but because of Hypno Wave, I was able to revive my party, heal, and get back into the fight. So don't tell me it's just a flaw in the overall game engine where status effects have no purpose. Other characters have cool stat-altering double text too, like Robo and Isla with their boogie move, which completely stops enemies in their tracks. Adding on to her poor stats, she has the worst hit rate in the game, along with, oddly, the main character Chrono. Traditionally, characters with firearm weapons have a high hit rate, as is the case with Luca's gun, because they're supposed to be good at using their own weapons. But not her! So she has the lowest hit rate, and the weakest attack power, and the worst defense, and the slowest growing hit points. Wow! And the problems don't stop there. Marl uses ice magic, which is the same category as Frog's water magic. Frog is a vastly superior fighter in Chrono Trigger. He hits harder with critical hits up the ass, huge frogs that thunder down on fools, and uses lightning swords at various points. And he can even heal the entire party on his own, and use water spells, which means Marl's entire moveset is almost completely replaceable. Tell me, would you rather be able to move entire mountains? Or would you rather wipe your ass?
And another thing, why is she shooting fire magic on the cover of the box art? Were Marl and Luca's elemental powers originally swapped? Or did they just do this for the appeal, for how good it looks?
Like, let's combine the most attractive female party member with the sickest looking fire magic in the game to make this battle scene look as badass as we can get. The in-game context doesn't even make sense. It's Chrono, Frog, and Marl who uses ice magic fighting what looks like the Hekran boss early in the game. First of all, Hekran doesn't even exist in 2300 AD, which is where this battle is being fought. It's a boss that you actually fight in a water cave in 1000 AD. And secondly, if we disregard that first fact, using ice magic in an ice environment doesn't seem to make much sense. So maybe that's why it shows Marl shooting fire? Artistic color contrast? Oh, I've always wondered what the deal with this absurd error was. Someone tell me the story here. Sorry, digressed again. Anyway, the only good move Marl has is haste. This is a good spell. It cuts in half the amount of time it takes for characters' ATB gauges to fill up, which can be extremely useful in long boss battles. This is the only time players would ever intentionally put Marl in the party based on her moveset alone. Oh, but never mind. Just put the haste helm on a character, and you have the benefits permanently. From the start of the battle too, with no magic cost. Oh, I'm sorry, but she's useless. Yeah, she can steal items with double charm with Isla's help, but Isla can do that on her own. So no, don't try to throw that wrench in my theory. Feel free to prove me wrong, but I can't think of a single reason why you would need to have Marl in your party. I know, I look like a hypocrite here, because the animations are actually quite awesome to look at, as I mentioned earlier, with every enemy moving and tons of flashy spell effects, but they really drop the ball when it comes to the pacing of some animations. I'll start with the most prevalent one, the enemy death animation. First of all, it doesn't even look that great. The enemies turn red and do a little dissipating explosion. With all the animation put in with everything else, couldn't they fall down to the ground first? Or something more rewarding? The worst part though is just how slow the animation is when you wipe out a big group of enemies.
Oh, damn! You're in trouble now! Luminaire! Yeah! Take it! Whew, almost done. Oh yeah, I really kicked their ass. Yeah. Doesn't that just kill your buzz? The momentum is ruined, especially after such a grand spectacle of graphics.
I mean, look at a game like Final Fantasy VII. Say you're Cloud and you take out a group of robots with a sick lightning spell. What happens? They both die at the same time, it's quick, and they even kind of break up into pieces, making you feel like you really kicked some ass. I know that's a more advanced console, I'm just saying, the enemy deaths could have been animated with a bit more pace and kick. Another poor showing occurs when you run away from battles. Don't get me wrong, players rarely run away from enemies anyway, especially since, as we discussed, the battles aren't too threatening. But it completely ruins the immersion. You hold L and R to try and run, and Chrono and friends don't even look like they're trying to get away. They just face a direction and stay there, frozen. And if you hold the button long enough, this happens.
I don't understand.
Why did the entire world just disintegrate into darkening, blurry sprites and then reappear with no enemies? Chrono Trigger prides itself on keeping the on-screen field map as its battleground, with the threats always visible, so why can't players actively be shown running away? It bewilders me.
But the worst offender in this category is one single spell. One elemental attack that completely hampers an otherwise awesome character. Water. You look at the name, and even that doesn't sound impressive. Water.
I mean, if you had a choice of elemental powers, and your choices included countless lightning bolts, a raging, all-consuming fireball, and the ultimate power of darkness, who the hell would pick the power to shoot a transparent bubble at 2 miles an hour?
But hey, maybe I'm biased. I mean, water completes the elemental triad after all. It's all fine. That is, until you use this attack.
Say you're Frog, and you're going to take out the enemy in the upper corner with water. The charge up makes you think something cool is going to happen with these blue aqua orbs hovering around him. And then you see this unimpressive transparent bubble. Anyway, the rest of the characters just freeze in time as this bubble desperately, slowly crawls across the battlefield.
Oh my god. Oh my lord, hit the enemy!
It's slower than sludge going uphill. Then it finally hits the enemy.
It just isn't very fun to use, and there's no impact. The enemy would more likely react with an annoyed grunt than take actual damage. Even that sound effect is pathetic. Psst. What is that? A bubble does not hurt anything. Has anyone ever died from a bubble attack? Like, if it swallowed the enemy, carried them a mile up in the air, popped and sent them crashing down, that would be something. Or if it burst into a really huge cascade deluge of water around the enemy. Or if there were like a whole bunch of rapid fire bubbles, high pressure and knocking the enemy down. There's so many ways you could go with this. But instead, they picked one solitary floating bubble.
Just don't get it. I mean, the enemies should have all been programmed with laughing animations just for this situation. For when a player actually tries to kill something with a bubble. And you know what else? It's just as weak as it looks. This juggler enemy is within Magus's castle, which most players should be at about level 20 to defeat. I'm on a New Game Plus file, and Frog is at level 56. No word of a lie. Almost triple the enemy's level, and that bubble spell wasn't enough to kill it.
Why would you bother using this slow-ass spell when there's absolutely no offensive upside? It's just pathetic. It's the worst elemental attack I've ever seen. Except for Din's Fire.
It's even used in the same way and at the same speed for some dual techs with Isla and Robo. If you were an enemy and you saw this 2-mile-an-hour bubble carrying a 5,000-pound robot, would you just stand there and watch it for 3 minutes before it popped and fell on you? Oh, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, Chrono fans, but these spells just really take the energy out of the game. Was that an awful pun? Absolutely. Damn straight it was, but it's still a hell of a lot more effective than this move. Thank God we have awesome bosses like Lavos and his amazing animated attacks, which keeps it, to this day, among the most intimidating, badass, omnipotent beings ever.
Chrono Trigger is definitely old school by this point, but the quality of the game in so many areas remains so high that gamers born in the new millennium and even later would really appreciate it and get into it if they were given a chance.
Soundtrack, characters, and colossal scale are worth the time investment. And it's actually a fairly breezy game by RPG standards that you can beat within 20 hours without doing all the extra stuff. But part of this is because of a very low difficulty, and there are a few issues with battle animations and abilities that are still bewildering to me to this day.
Still, go and find it on your old Nintendo DS, the PlayStation Store, or even dig out an old Super Nintendo if you're as old as me. Go and relive one of the greatest RPGs in gaming history. I genuinely hope you enjoyed the analysis, but please tell me, what hits did I miss? Because I know there are so many that I could have touched on. And are there any other misses I could have hit? Please let the discussion begin in the comments below. I would really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much again for joining me, and I'll see you in a couple weeks as always. Halloween's coming up pretty soon. There's a lot of parties going around at that time. I'm more of a lone wolf type, but hey, maybe I should have a party. What do you think? Well, anyway, we might figure that out later. Have a great weekend, gamers!